I'm back to talk to you a little more about learning objectives. This time we'll focus on module learning objectives. To review from last week, we talked about course objectives, that they need to be measurable and specific, and that you're using action verbs from Bloom's taxonomy. I hope that it was helpful for you to do some practice with that last week and to get feedback from your colleagues and designer. At this point, hopefully everyone has developed their course objectives or is close to a final draft, and we can shift focus to your module objectives. First, we'd like you to brainstorm a list of broad topics that you would need to cover in order for students to achieve your course objectives. You could pull these from a previous semester's schedule or start fresh. The number of topics will, of course, vary depending on the length of your course, the content, the level of students, etc. It's possible that thinking about these key topics may help you to determine how many modules you're going to have in your course. On a related note, we're often asked by instructors how many modules they should have. Our response is that it is dependent on the course and the content. This is definitely an individual decision to make and one to chat with your own designer about. Next, once you've got a draft of the topics you'll be covering, or better still, you've assigned topics to modules, you're going to shift focus to the objectives. For each module, you're going to create at least one and usually 2 to 3 learning objectives. At the module level, your objectives will be more specific and focus on what students need to do during that chunk of time to move toward achieving the overall course objectives. You want to be sure that you're writing these in language that's easy for students to understand, so avoid jargon and remember to avoid those taboo verbs we mentioned last week: learn, know, and understand. Here's an example taken from our course map. Backward design and learning objectives were 2 of the topics on our list, and we chose to pair those in one module. Then we asked ourselves the question, what do my students need to do, practice, or experience in order to master this topic, or at least come close to mastery? So we decided on the objectives which you can see in the course, which are to analyze backward design theory and to develop measurable and specific course objectives. Once you've drafted module learning objectives, you'll go on to consider what activities or assessments students will do to demonstrate their achievement of these objectives, and finally, what materials they will need to support their learning. One thing to be mindful of is that you're careful to avoid writing objectives that are actually activities. We often see objectives such as students will discuss neoclassical art history, where the activity, discuss, is built into the objective. If we think about what students will be doing rather than how or with what tool, then we can edit the objective to say, students will analyze the neoclassical movement as a response to Rococo, which is more specific. Then we know that we need to include materials related to the neoclassical movement and Rococo in that module, and that our activity or assessment will need to be something where students can show that they have completed this analysis. So it could be a discussion, but could also be a paper, a multimedia presentation, or an infographic, among other possibilities. And the objective expands the option for demonstrating mastery rather than limiting it. With the course mapping process and activity, what we're asking you to do is visually represent the alignment of the critical pieces of your own course, the objectives, assessments, and materials. This brings clarity to your course design, helps you to include relevant materials and assessments, and lets you see if there is anything superfluous. So, now it's your turn. Think about the topics that you'll need to cover in order for students to achieve your course objectives, and then take a stab at creating module objectives for at least 4 weeks or modules of your course. This is not easy, and it is going to be intense work, but we promise you it will pay off as you begin building your course. I will also add that it makes updating and improving your course from term to term go more smoothly as well. Once you have that draft of your module objectives for at least 4 modules, plug them into the course map template or whatever format you prefer, add in some notes about possible assessments and materials, and submit it at the close of Module 3. Remember that this is a draft and that your designer will give you feedback. Our goal with that feedback is to give you confidence moving forward with the rest of your course map and course building. Good luck and happy writing!